are live. Hello, Bill.
There we
Welcome,
go.
welcome. It is a delight to see you. I hope I didn't just jump my speakers. Hello, hello. Australia is in the building. Diane, welcome. Kyla from Texas. You see, Jennifer. See, I'm working on remembering where everybody is from because I have my nifty members map. If you aren't already on that, come on
Oh,
down and join us, members map. So, hello everyone. I'm Barbara Tien with Projectkin, and joining me today is Kathy Stone, whom we lovingly call
oh,
the cornerstone for Projectkin.
yeah.
Because this week on Thursday, we have Kathy's Corner. And today I've asked Kathy, hey Kyla, I've asked Kathy to come and talk to us a little bit about what she has planned for us. So, from Calgary, Canada, Kathy Stone, take it away.
Thanks, Barbara. I'm looking forward to Thursday. So if you were at the last Kathy's Corner, we had a bit of a discussion towards the end. It wasn't our topic, but we got into a bit of discussion about terminologies used. We talked about the whole gamut of things like we use legacy, we use archive, we use backup, we use sync. And then there's more. There's family library, family photo collection, family photo estate I've seen used, a life and legacy portfolio, a family collection. And I thought, as some commenters said afterwards, maybe we should, maybe that would be a topic for Kathy's Corner to talk about what all these terms mean. And some of them have meaning outside of what we think they mean, and others don't, if that makes any sense. Like some of them have a meaning, and I'll use archive, for example. So we use archive. We talk about that in terms of our photos, but there's also, as Barbara well knows and has educated me on, digital archiving, which is something that is used in the IT world. Archive is also a building with stuff in it because we have our provincial archives here, we have our city archives, and we have museums and archives in many places. I think essentially Library of Congress is a big archive, and then there's the Internet Archive. So that word archive can have a lot of different meanings. So I thought, well, let's talk about that on Kathy's Corner and the importance of it. And then legacy, that's a word being used a lot more now is the idea of leaving a legacy, or in terms of our family history. Like the legacy kind of used to kind of be, you left people money and that was the legacy you left. But it's shifted now, I think, to be part of what all our family of genealogists do. It's the legacy is tracking down the family history and all those things. So that word's again, and now it's also used in the photo management world as a legacy collection and things. So I thought, well, and then we've talked about this before, but it never hurts to mention it again because these are really important because it's not sort of, archive and legacy can kind of be what we want them to be, like what it means to us. Backup and sync, not so much. Backup and sync are very important terms also used that, so we'll talk about that and talk about the importance of that and what they are and what makes up a legacy. And I think I've said this before in terms of other things. With some words, if it's for you, it only matters what you think and that you be consistent.
Right.
And
Well,
it's the same. We talked about that in terms of dating, because I worked for the Canadian federal government, and in Canada, we go year, month, day. That's the standard. And so but then I look, and I think in the US, you go year, day, month, and some other places it's day, year, month, day, like all sorts of combinations. And I've said, bottom line is, as long as you're consistent, that's what's important. And it may be the same with some of these terms when we talk about them. So I thought, let's talk about that on Thursday and just get some of those terms out of there and figure out what it is, partly towards our goal of thinking what our end goal is of what am I trying to create here for the
I think one
family.
of the reasons it's so important to really dig into terminology is sometimes, and I say this as someone who's career in technology, very often, words have a very, very specific meaning. You can do anything else you want with them, but in this context, it means this specific thing. Did you or did you not check it in? Okay, for example, that can make or break a company. But and crash software. In in this context, sometimes people can use words to make themselves feel good when in fact they haven't done the thing that is the important part of the thing because they never really understood what the thing is. And I'd like to think that what a lot of what we try to do within Kathy's Corner is kind of no judgment. It's a safe zone. We all have dirty laundry and closets that stuff tumbles out when we open them. It's okay. But if you want to try to accomplish this thing, here's why you would want to do these things.
Mhm.
And this is why you want to do it this way. Taking dates, for example. Well, it doesn't matter which way you want to phrase a date, but if you keep jumbling it up different ways, March 7th and July 3rd are two very different
Yeah.
dates, right?
Mhm.
And you can be very confused about many days in the calendar if you are a family that live somewhat in the United States and somewhat in Canada, for example. Not saying who, but
Mm.
it can get very it can get very confusing. And that's why, there are going to be absolutists out there, and that's lovely. But
Mhm.
it can also, many of us, to the extent that we're collecting family stories, have to be open to where the stories are going to come from and welcoming to all the different places they might be coming from. And at the end of the day, that's a certain amount of, I won't use sync, I'll say harmonizing. Because sync in
It's a special it's
technology
one of those
has a
words with
very
special.
specific meaning. Actually, not just technology, but specifically when it comes to the management of databases
Mhm.
relating to computers and storage. That can be a very important
Yeah.
function. Dropbox.
Yeah, and it has a function and a meaning in the photo organizing world too. It has taken on a
Oh,
very distinct difference, and not knowing the difference between backup and sync can
yeah.
often, and probably in the data world too, cause you to
Well, it's database.
lose a
It's a
whole bunch of stuff.
fundamental That's right. It's a fundamental database concept. And in back in the 70s and 80s, we were all learning DBase and databases and all the functions of databases. And then we all grew up and it became part of everything everybody does. And in this world, if you aren't careful about what you're doing, what you thought
Mhm.
was backing it up was simple, and now you can delete it. You just deleted it totally, which is not what you meant.
Yeah. Well, and even something as simple, and Barbara, this will probably make you cringe when you hear this discussion. I was on last week on a session, a genealogist, not done by anyone in our circles, I will add. The outside of, in my outside world, somewhere else, another thing I'm involved in, and the genealogists were talking about, naming your files and your photos, and they were using periods in the file names. And the photo managers that were on this little chat are all going, don't ever do that. Don't put like a period has a significance data wise in a file name, and like use a space, use a dash,
Okay.
but don't use.
Okay. All right. So there's a good example because there are things that are in the X world. One never ever does that because you'd be an idiot to do that. All
Yeah.
right. I've spent my career being the idiot that comes into whatever the field is. I've got armor like nobody's business. So I don't mind being the idiot. And I also have learned that it's actually a very powerful thing to be confident to be the idiot. So
Mhm.
I'm a Macintosh user, which means that I skipped that whole stupid world of dir .dox. What the hell? Why? Why would anybody do that? Because when the Macintosh came along, they said we're going to create a separate an abstraction layer that what the user names a file has nothing to do with what's happening on the underlayer. And the
Mhm.
underlayer is where all of the other things like .png and things like that are going to happen, where the name of the file affects what kind of file type it is configured as. I'm
Mhm.
going to guess that the never ever use a period
I see.
relates to that. Is that the issue?
Yeah. in the PC world, like more probably.
Interesting. Because you know what? I use
And
them
it
all
was
the time.
more of
I
the
call
the
them
advice I
dots,
think given
but
is
I
that
use them all the time.
you could do this, just don't. Like
Oh, I see
watch
why it's
out for
bad manners.
special characters in file names.
Yeah.
And these
Oh,
ones are good to use, but watch what kind of special characters you put in a file name. When you're
right.
just trying to name a photo, like we were talking about,
Yeah.
if I'm naming my photo year, month, day, that's how I do mine. Year, month, day, um, Bobby's 5th birthday. Don't put a period in between Bobby, birthday, etc. That was
So,
sort of the theory that
yeah,
don't
no,
add punctuation that may have a special meaning.
yeah. So, rules, never having been very good at following them. One of the reasons I allow myself to never be very good at following rules is because I want to know why. I'm that kid, that little kid that's always pushing the button. I see you, Lisa, always pushing the button saying, "But why?" And yes, I did stick my finger in a plug to find out why. Don't do that. Wasn't pleasant.
Already did
But,
it.
as I said, on a Macintosh, you have an abstraction layer that you can put dots. You can put squiggly marks, the tilde. Ooh, that's a dangerous one. Special characters. And it becomes for professionals who are always organizing and cataloging photos, you know that if you do this, it's going to lead to dangerous places. Maybe not now, but someday.
Mhm.
So, uh, for many of you will still remember my beloved Ponga, my software of days gone by. I'll have you know that I spent a good few weeks trying to debug issues that turned out to be my in approximately 1930 because it seemed like a good thing to say.
Mhm.
This was mom with her mom in approximately 1930. The tilde nearly killed me because the tilde mark it's really a failure of the databases. In this case, it's Amazon AWS, which, by the way, is behind even on Substack. If you store a PDF on Substack and then look at the URL you get back, that's on AWS. And that system burped when it got the tilde. And, it took a whole bunch of undoing to fix that. So Lisa McGuire chimes in to
Mhm.
say, I have yet to start properly cataloging my photos. Lisa, you're not alone.
Um,
So this is really helpful conversation. I should add that as a fellow idiot, you see, my club of idiots, we can be invaluable in testing protocols and processes. That's right. I put the fool in foolproof. Hey, there's a whole club of us there. I'm going to use that line. I like that.
who
You
tried
use
to
this.
just do that? So
I
that's kind of what
know.
we're going to talk about. Not so much the dating and things, but I will say to Lisa, I believe we could dig it up for you. Maybe in the references, Barbara, there is I'm pretty sure we talked about dating and naming files in one of the Kathy's corners at some point, because that's one of the 8 steps. So that might be something we can direct you to, Lisa. And then we're always open to answering questions. But we may talk
Yeah.
a bit about that too when we talk on Thursday.
But that's a great point. A little bit of reading up if you want to. I will include in the notes, as with all of these, there's no handouts, but I always do my best to capture what happened in the conversation and drop it into the notes when I circulate the video. And for all of you watching these live sessions, let Substack circulate the video immediately after the recording so people who got the email, get there late, can still watch it. But then I update the file with notes. So if you ever see nothing in the file, you'll know that I'm still updating it. Just do a refresh later. Kyla drops in. Have you seen a space in photo files transfer as percentage to a Mac, or is that dating
Ooh.
me? Because they used to do that when you went from Win to Mac. A space in photo files transfer as percentage to a Mac. I'm not sure, Kyla, what you're referring to, but don't worry. I think I got you on age. The percentage often appears because I think it's %20 is space in HTML. And perhaps that even came over from some previous character mapping. So, the characters that we use before there was HTML, there was ASCII. And
Mhm.
ASCII is a table of characters, like A, and numbers. And so for every character in fonts, there is a mapping like that. And I believe there were some disconnects between what Windows had and what Macintosh had. And so I'm not surprised if there was a percent something between the two of you. And I think you could be absolutely right that, when you find something wacky like that in a file name, it probably did come over in an incomplete transfer, so to speak.
Mhm.
It's kind of like those transporter failures on Star Trek.
And I have no idea. I'm just because I'm going to be the idiot here and not know anything about going that direction. I usually go Mac to Windows, but um, it could also be multiple. Well, I've seen weird things where things have been backed up and then moved. Like we backed up this onto a external hard drive, and then we backed it up onto a USB key, and then we backed it up again, and then we put it back on our computer, where strange things happen. Usually, it's to the dates, capture date and modified date, but often I've seen weird things happen in the files where I've had to do. There's been something's odd showing up in symbols in file names from it, so
Right.
that can be a factor too.
So jumping in here from New York, Bill Moore, who has, I think, spent more than a little bit of time supporting a lot of creative people doing creative things with file names and helping them get out of trouble, points out that generally speaking, a dash and an underscore are a better thing to use for spaces. Honestly, all these years, I could never understand why people made such a fuss about using an underscore. Again, Mac user here. Coddled Mac user. Confession 101.
And I think
Very
that's a
bad.
good point, Bill. And it becomes not are you disobeying rules, but it becomes to what's the safest thing if I'm going to do all this work? What's the best way to do it so that I don't end up with a problem down the road? So I think that's and that was kind of in that discussion that was had there because there were some people who were, as I mentioned, were in the chat were going like, no, don't, what are you doing that? Why are you doing that? And then and unfortunately the computer literacy comment of explanation didn't come from that. It came from it's my own family photos and it's okay in the program I use. And that upset me more than the periods because it's like, it might be what you use right now, but part of our whole thing here with Projectkin and my philosophy is let's make sure that wherever, and I'm not, I use a platform. We all use platforms. Let's make sure that we don't get things in there that we can only use the platform. And
Right.
you already mentioned the other word, so we won't go back into there, but because you just don't know. Like
Yeah.
you just never know, and you don't want. I saw something in my photo managers group the other day where somebody said, "Oh, well, I have a client who has all of her things in. Now, here's a blast from the past in Picasa, and is now trying to get a new computer and everything, and no longer you can't get the software anymore, and so sort of was trying to figure out how to get stuff out of now in Picasa.
Google doesn't do a conversion from Picasa? No.
Don't
Oh,
know if they do anymore.
I mean, they bought the company. I would think they would.
They did, but that doesn't mean that they did
No,
anything with the
no.
company. So,
But so I think, getting back to many of you have joined since, getting back to the top line point here, this isn't an argument about you should always. And what it
never.
really is a conversation about terminology, how it's used, why it's used that way. And we went down a rabbit hole
Mhm.
relating to characters. Pretty soon we were at ASCII and I was ready to go to Unicode. 2 byte characters. But we're coming back because the whole point of all of that is not that you should and you shouldn't, but here's why. And just in the terminology of what characters you use for naming a file can get you into trouble down the road in a different platform. So even if you're not using different platforms now, someday you might. And yes, Kyla, thank you. Whatever you do, do something to preserve it. And that's, I think, something that's so different about family history, about the stuff that we do to archive our own genealogy, the stories that we collect. Our family history is in many ways, we're drawing from our ancestors to give to our descendants that we may never know. And we want that to be something that they can read. And we left the once we walk away from insisting everything be printed, and I can talk about that, but I'm
Yeah.
not going to. um hearts, please stop her. um Once we start talking about preserving things in digital form, then it gets complicated. It doesn't have to be all that complicated, and that's what we'll walk through. So in the notes to this one, I will include the part 1 of the part 8 series, 8 parts. Wait a minute, how did it work? Oh yes, it was an 8-part a post that you wrote for the 8 steps, and then the series of episodes from Kathy's Corner, each one of which walk through 1 and sometimes 2 of the steps to cover them. And it's just a simple principle that is platform agnostic, or shall I say platform independent. And, it just all the way across the way, stay out of trouble and preserve it for the long run, right?
Well, and in
Yay!
terms of your printed things, I was reminded of many moons ago. I was involved with Creative Memories when I first had twins and realized you couldn't do teaching and consulting in business anymore if you had twins because you're kind of busy. I got involved in Creative Memories because, first of all, as I just said, I had twins and I was taking an awful lot of pictures. And I looked, and this is old. My kids are going to be 29 in a couple months. So this is a long time ago. This is no digital. This is all
No
print. Get
camera,
them
no
developed.
smartphones. Yeah.
Make a ton of copies. But at one of the conferences for Creative Memories, the fellow his name was Dr. Mark Meisen, and he was in fact he looked after all the archival. Creative Memories makes archival photosafe products, and he was the scientist who ran the lab. And he was speaking one day, and it was just at the outset of digital, when digital was becoming a thing that was common in homes. And he said, the one thing I think about, and you would expect from the scientist, you would have got the big push for that. And he says, if I have a printed photo, all I need is my eyes to see it. I was like, good point. So
That's true. That's true.
yeah.
But will that paper be preserved?
Yes.
Or the video, all I need are my eyes to see it, but that doesn't work on VHS tapes.
Not at all, though. Yeah.
Not at all.
They're
And
deteriorating bad.
that's right. And so the way I see it with something like a VHS tape or the drawers full of Sony high 8 tapes that I have, every time you play it, it's like a Russian roulette as to whether you're going to, it's going to be the last time. So,
Well, and actually, you don't even need to play them. VHS are very, very nasty for deteriorating.
yeah,
Can I give a
just
plug for
sitting there.
September? Because it's very rare that I know what I'm going to talk about a whole month ahead of time. So,
Kathy, what's coming in September? What is September?
well, September is
August.
There's something happens in September that's important to me. And as some of you know, I've been a member of the Photo Managers since 2013, I guess. And, in 2014, I went to my first conference, and it was after the Joplin tornadoes in 2012, and after we had severe flooding in southern Alberta. And a group got together and talked about what can we do, because there was a lot of focus on trying to recover those disastered photos, but what can we do to help people not get in that position where the only copy of your photos blew over 6 farms over and people are trying to reunite them? which I'll send you the link, Barbara, because it's actually quite a fascinating story to read about the work that was done after Joplin tornadoes. But so that led the group, and I was on part of that group, to found Save Your Photos Day, which we held the first one in September 27th, 2014. And it's now become an annual event, which is now a month, because having it for just one day was tough. And the photo managers put on all sorts of courses and training and information sessions. But I thought what we'd talk about, so I can sort of honor Save Your Photos Month, but also I'm not going to talk in terms of massive disasters, but I thought we'd talk about rescuing your photos in your collection that have damage of some kind and what we can do with them. So that's what I thought I'd talk about in there, and talk about, when you got the photos are stuck together, when somebody stuck a piece of Scotch tape over the top of the photo, when there's
Roof leaks in the attic.
when they're curled because they were stored somewhere in humidity and they all curled up, and when they're stuck to the glass in a frame, and or when you've had those, when people bought those, probably Kmart back in the day, the frames with all the holes cut in them so you could stick on your wall a whole bunch of photos, and people put their only copy in there. Because now when they come out like 30, 40 years later, you've got a faded circle in the middle and then brilliant color underneath the paper and all sorts of things like that. Just if there's things damaged, I'll talk a little bit about the infamous the photo manager's nightmare what was called magnetic albums. That was the old
Oh,
sticky
I got
pages.
those.
Yeah, and we'll talk a bit about how to get the stuff out of there and what's the best strategy. And again, when we talk about saving your photos, I mentioned this when I did a ton of work saving people's photos that were damaged is a light word. They were completely soaked in muddy, yucky water after flooding, and sat in that for several weeks before they could get out of there. So they were nasty. Not less than that, but it's important to me, and I learned quite a bit from that. So it's I'm hoping more that you don't have things like that, like box loads of those in your collection, but I can give you some tips on that too. And I thought, well, just in honor of Save Your Photos Month, we'll talk about that, photos and damage and stuff. So
Kathy's disaster stories.
I'll I won't go too far into pictures, but I'll entertain you with some pictures of nasty flooded photos, and just family collections that where a pipe burst over top of the pool table and mom and dad weren't home, so the son thought the best thing to do was to try and cover up the mess. So he stacked all the photos up in a pile, big thick piles, and guess what happened when they dried? Glued together. So it's So
Yeah.
we'll talk about that, and talk about in terms of hopefully the few we have in our collection that have damage, and what we can and what we can't do, and then my big thing also is always safety, particular when we're talking about mold. So that's a sneak peek of September for Save Your
That's
Photos
in
Month.
September. But this Thursday,
This
the
Thursday,
focus is on
terminology.
terminology. Make sure we're
Yeah,
all pretty literally on the same page. So, here we come to the top or bottom of the hour. We try to keep these tight to a short 30 minutes. And I want to thank all of you for taking the time to join us on your Sunday or Monday morning. Thank you very much, Australia. I see you.
thank you.
And we'll look forward to our program. I'll be doing it once again. I have another little different location. I'll be participating in a Dragon Con in Atlanta, but I'll tell you all about that on Thursday. So join us, won't you?
Thanks everyone for coming.
With that, we're going to say goodbye and talk to you soon. Thank you again. And thank you so much, Kathy. Till then,
Bye bye.
send me that article. I'll put it in the notes. Bye now. Thank you. Thank you. I do a little magic. There we go. Okay. Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye bye.